Alright, so we're gonna keep going from where we left off previously. I've been using the bus model instead, because I had to delete what I was working on previously. As you can see, we've got a lot of it UV'd out, but not quite everything. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be finishing up the UVs on this, and then once that's finished, I'm going to be showing laying them out properly, and then from there, uh, dropping it into Substance Painter, creating the materials, and then importing those materials and setting them up in Unreal. So let's get to work. So here we've got an example of something that's not quite cooperating. So in this case, because this is just being weird, I think the best bet is to go back uh, go back to our previous selection, and we're just going to try reprojecting this. So we're going to make sure we get it from the correct angle, project it on the Y. Now it's a little bit better. And we'll go into the fold. We're going to unfold this vertically first. There we go. So that little bit of lag actually happened because I had selected the UV shell rather than the individual UVs, so nothing else was pinned. And so it was unfolding everything at once, but these are already unfolded, so it didn't actually affect anything. But we're going to switch over back to UVs, and which you do by holding down right click, and then this gives you the different options of what you can select. So edge lets you select individual edges, UV shell lets you grab the whole UV shell, and UV lets you grab the individual UV vertices. So now we've gotten this straightened out. It was projecting from the wrong angle. So now that we've got it straightened out, we can get back to working on things. So what that little command was, is you saw how my camera was moving around the center axis and it was kind of making it difficult to track where anything was. What you can do is you can go into View and select Look at Selection, and this will center your camera as well as your camera's pivot point around whatever you have selected. This is really helpful, especially when working on large assets like this, where if it puts you, say, in the middle of the asset itself, you'll be trying to look at a small detail and the whole thing will be rotating around. So that little setting helps out a lot. Another little note right here. I'm actually going to grab this separately. For one, it'll mean it'll be easier to just establish some seams here and unfold this mirror properly. But additionally, because this is the actual reflective mirror portion, it'll probably be pretty easy to simply use the same material that we create for the glass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that little piece separately, and I'm going to put it in the same corner that we're going to put the glass and windows and things like that. So what I'm doing right now is before we unfold it, I'm going to establish this seam real quick. Mainly because this is nice and flat and it'll lay out really easily. But these other elements get a little bit tricky. So an easy thing that we can do is basically any of these sort of edges here are good candidates. These types of things right here. These will get complicated when we try to unfold them. So the easiest thing to do is to grab these edges, and these will be where we make our seams. Before we do any unfolding, we're going to cut. And sort of the idea is, think of unfolding a box, for instance. When you take apart a box to put it in the recycling or something like that, what you're going to want to do is... it looks like we may have missed this face, actually, so we'll need to reproject that with our UVs, and grab that, and we can just sew that on is what we can do. So we'll grab that when we project the mirror. But these little corners, because they're already corners, it doesn't matter so much that there's a seam here. And also, like if you're unfolding a pizza box or something, these are points that you would pull apart in order to separate the box. So similarly, we're just kind of doing the same thing here, in these weird little spots that would otherwise be a little tricky to unfold. So we'll see how. I think these should be good, and then we're going to want to put one here. Will that work? We'll see how that does. We'll cut that, and then we're just going to see how this unfolds first. This may go disastrously, but you have to experiment. Okay, so this is definitely a little messy. Something that we can use is we can go into our tools and we can go into the smooth tool, and the smooth tool is an interesting one. This helps to sort of unfold things. It can get a little bit weird and a little bit wacky. As you can see here, this is sort of folded up in on itself. But these other portions, just like I said, where we put these seams, they've unfolded out pretty nicely. So we can just figure out what's going on in this little section. If I we'll just grab a face here and see which of these we have to hit W will take you back to the move tool, and that'll take you out of that previous tool. So let's figure out what it is. Yeah, I had a feeling this one would be a little bit trouble. So what we can do is we'll actually just disconnect this entirely, because it's sort of its own complex shape. It's a little bit easier just to separate it off, and from there we can unfold this little piece individually. Similarly, we can see how this is doing, and we can run our unfold functions again. Now that smooth has sort of helped flatten things out a little bit, we can use our standard unfold to sort of smash everything into place a little bit, especially now that we've removed those previous pieces that have been causing us trouble. We'll do the same function in here, just to sort of get this shape working. So now we can grab this. We'll go back to our smooth tool, and we'll see if this can help unfold it. Sometimes what you can do is you can use relax, and relax gets a little bit funky in and of itself, but this one it might be easier to just run the unfold function. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on with this guy. So these faces right here seem to be the problem children. Ah, there it is. So what's happening is, because this doesn't really have anywhere to go when it's attempting to unfold, these two slices are connected, these edges. So we can just grab this edge. There's actually a cut tool, so we can grab this and just select that edge, and we can do cut. just from this little shortcut in here. So now we can go back to our move tool, or our UV tool, and select this, and we'll unfold it again. So unfold's still having a bit of trouble with this one. What we can do is we can grab this edge manually, or my apologies, this UV manually, and just sort of forcibly move it into a new position. And this isn't the position that we want this to be in. This is sort of all over the place and folding in over itself. But by doing this, we're able to give the computer a little bit more to work with when we actually run the unfold function. And there, it's straightened out much nicer. It's straightened out along this edge that we gave it. So that'll give it a much nicer curve. If we wanted to check, for instance, if this is getting any warping, you can see that it is warping a little bit. So we're gonna probably run unfold a couple more times, or we would if this is something that you would be looking at very often. Because this is a tiny little detail off in the side, it's not quite as important. There's not many opportunities that the player is going to be shoving their face into this corner to look at this exact thing, and because there isn't a detailed texture on here, this will likely mostly be flat color because it's just this little corner piece of the bus. What we can do is we'll just run unfold a couple more times. That'll help by going up and down between unfolding along the U and unfolding along the V. It'll help to resize it a little bit. We can run our modify unfold again, vertical, horizontal, and that gets us back to our shape as well. So this will help just to keep this together. And then if we wanted to, we can even grab. See, these don't line up super nicely. So what we could do, just for the sake of keeping things together, would be to see where some of these seams line up, and just grab this, and we'll do our move and sew, and we can grab this and just sort of scooch it out of the way. Because this is, a single object, it's kind of easier to keep these things close together, so that we know that this right here is the mirror. Now we're gonna grab, if we'll go back into our faces, we can see that we're missing this face here, so we'll grab this face along with the rest of the mirror, surface, and we'll just separate those and then cut and sew them. Because this is facing forward, we're going to want to project along the Z. So we'll go into our mapping, planar map, Z, and that gave us a nice result. Something I should have done is I should have moved this out of the way beforehand, but because this is in nice pieces, it's pretty easy. So we can unfold, and unfolding, because this is already like almost facing the Z directly, just unfolding it once gives us the result that we want. Now what we can do is we can go into our cut tool, and we can go into our cut tool, and that'll cut it. Cutting does tend to move it a little bit using the cut tool, though it is there are some joys in UVing. The cut tool looks real cool when you are slicing things, but despite it looking fun, it's not actually that's actually kind of a bad thing, because it moves your UVs out of the way after we've already flattened them. So it'll be easier just to move to the W. We'll grab this edge, we'll go up here, we'll go into cut, which is Shift X, and that'll cut that, and then we want to attach this back into place along with this other portion. So we'll be able to go into edge, and we can see where these line up, and we will use our move and sew tool, which will just grab it and it'll put it into place. So there we go, and now we've got the glass portion of our mirror and the rest of our mirror, and we're going to grab this and just put it off to the side, and now we'll do the second mirror. Another method that we can use is rather than projecting everything at once and then unfolding it, is we can do a little bit more of a specific projection where we'll grab all these top-facing faces, grab these, and then we'll be projecting along this axis specifically. And then once we have everything flattened out after we've projected it, we'll take those individual flattened out pieces and we'll put them together. This method is a little better for detailed things where you know you need to get really, really precise UVs with how specifically avoiding stretching and things like that, because this means that you're capturing the faces in the projection in their most sort of accurate state, because you're projecting from the most accurate camera angle, or at least the most accurate plane, rather than projecting from the camera. We can use the planar, and that'll give us a more predictable result because it's an orthographic capture. So this gives us a bunch of different little pieces, but these pieces are things that we can just sew together. That's what those sew, cut and sew functions are for. So we can grab these individual pieces, we can grab their UVs, and then we'll hit unfold. That puts them into a nice shape, accurate to how they look in here. So now we can grab these different sides. These are all sides that are facing along our x-axis, mostly. Pretty much along the x-axis. So this is, rather than going from projection to creating seams, we're sort of projecting where we expect our seams to be already. This piece, even though it is technically facing the angle that we want, I kind of want to keep this connected to this whole strip right here, because those will all likely be the exact same material. So now that we've gotten these, and lastly, yeah, we've gotten all these, we can go in here and I will do a project along the X, planar, X, project. And we've got our individual pieces. We'll split them up a little bit. We'll grab these, we'll move them. We'll grab our UVs, and then we will unfold. And these will sort of go to their more correct position. And then we'll move these out of the way. And this is, you know, it's going to look like a pile of little pieces at first. But what we're going to do is we're gonna take all those little pieces and we're gonna stitch them together into our canvas. So we're grabbing these pieces now. These are all these that are facing along the z-axis. So that also includes our sort of big main portion here. We'll grab this as well. And now we'll grab these large outside faces. Do not want to extrude, so we're just going to avoid accidentally clicking that. Holding down, you have to be careful when holding down the shift key, because if you accidentally slip and drag on one of the things, it'll accidentally create extrusions. And if you accidentally create an extrusion that's really subtle and you don't realize you've created an extrusion, that can cause some pretty major problems, because you'll have wayward faces that you didn't realize you had created, and that can get those are things that will show up in your UVs when you start trying to do things. You'll start seeing strange lines and seams in places that you didn't realize, and what that'll be is it'll be those unintended extrusions. So you have to be really careful with that. We're going to grab these and we're going to run our unfold again. And there we go. These are all looking nice and smooth. And what we can do now is we can grab these individual edges and we can move these out. And I think what we're going to do is I'm going to grab these. These are where we had previously made those seams. So So we're going to grab all these, we're going to go cut, and then we'll take these pieces and sew them onto their counterparts. So we'll grab this edge, we'll go to move and sew, and that lines up just perfectly with that. Go to there, and also like with other operations within Maya, once you've done something, you can hit the G key and it will repeat that. So in this types of situations where we're sewing together a lot of little pieces, it's pretty easy to grab this and be able to go G. And once again, we've got this piece, which is our mirror face. So we'll put that off to the side rather than sewing it onto the others. We can see this. We performed a different operation, so now we need to use our move and sew again. Snap this together. We can grab this side right here, snap this together. And this is creating a bit of an ugly seam. This is the same sort of little problem child piece from before. So we can just sort of grab our individual UVs and just move it a little bit, because this is again a tiny little section that the player is never going to see. So it doesn't matter if that one's a little bit warped. So let's continue in here. Where's the best place that we can connect up this little problem piece? These two will go nicely here. We can move and sew these. These two are pretty nice, so we can grab these and move and sew. Let's see where we can hook this guy up. Having these line up super precisely isn't exactly the highest priority. So we can just grab all this and unfold it nicely. This is sort of very in there piece. So our probably easiest connection point is, well, nowhere exactly. So this piece will actually be, this is a situation where we can actually grab this and disconnect this from here. We'll move this over again because it's probably easier if we had these pieces connected rather than where we had it connecting previously. And now we can line this up to here, and this will work a little bit nicer. And while this looks a little bit weird because there is an actual physical seam here, it doesn't matter quite as much that we have this. If we'd like, we can connect up these points right here, but this will start to warp and deform if we try to sew it together too much. So we don't really have to worry about that too much. And now in here we can grab, I think, just these pieces right here, and we'll move and sew these. And there we go. We've got our second mirror. We'll run one more unfold just to grab any little strange things. And now we've got our second mirror. Our second mirror with our second mirror piece. And now if we grab everything at once, we can see that we've got almost everything finished. Now what remains is if we hold shift, this will sort of invert our selection. If we go into faces, grab this, and we'll hold shift and we'll invert our selection. and then we can click Isolate Selected. We can see exactly what we need to finish UVing. Aside from those. So, I think what we're going to do next is we're going to grab these little items of these tail lights and these tail lights and the front lights. Actually, we'll grab this. We'll grab this real quick. To give it the effect of that sort of plastic light covering, we'll be able to do that. So by doing this, we've now got our individual weird little circles here, and then we've got these outer facing slices. This is beginning to look like a Junji Ito horror piece. 1,000 eyes of UVs judging us. Thank you, Tomas, for inviting me into the VFX channel. Alright, now that we've got this weird little horror setup, we can grab all these and we're going to run our unfold. There we go. Much nicer. And these will look better when projected from the Y, because we'll be able to split it down the middle the same way that we did with the tires. So we can grab this, hit project, And it's gonna look a little odd at first. No denying that. Because these are so spread out and far apart from each other. So what we'll do is we'll get all these nice and close so that we can work on our seams. Because these are all these individual lights. But we want to avoid there we go. So by straightening these out and messing around with both the optimize tool and the unfold tool, we're able to get these to where they should be. This is what I've been aiming to do because these are just interior lines. These are just strips that are laid out. But for whatever reason, the tools that we have been attempting were having a bit of trouble with it. So now what we can do is we can hit straighten UVs, and this will just sort of give us a nicer angle to work with on each of these. We'll just rotate some of these mostly into place. Straighten those out, just to help with how we stack these individually. Aligned by size means that if we do want to do specific things for these specific lights, like say we want this to be, these interiors to be one color or a different color, by having them all aligned next to each other, it means that we can easily see what's what. We can affect all of these very quickly. So, from our previously jumbled mess to a nice condensely packed set of lights. We'll grab this and put it off to the side. Remember, it's also important to save. Maya is Maya, and Maya will do things. So, now that this is complete, we can actually see what all is left, which should solely be the actual sides of the bus is pretty much the only thing that's left. So if we were to grab this and take a look at everything we've got, we can see that the sides of the bus are all that's left. So we'll grab hold shift. And we'll just see if we can grab everything at once. We are going to need to switch to face so we can see things. Grab these. Yes, so by the looks of it, it is just these interior, these two side faces. So we'll just do one big projection along the x-axis, grabbing our planar, selecting X, projecting. And this is going to be a very strange shape at first. We're actually going to want to see if we can have our UVs handle this a little bit better for us. There we go. By keeping the same width and height, we can see that this is basically almost already done for us. So we can grab these individual shells, move them out of the way. We do appear to be missing one piece, which is a little bit odd. It seems we missed... Here's this one. Here's this one. These two are just on top of each other. Perfect. So, these all unfolded pretty nicely. We may need to make some cuts and seams, but we're going to see how it unfolds first. Nope. Things actually came out very nicely. And by unfolding also will take care of if things are, if anything is reversed, that will be taken care of by unfolding it. So let's line up these in their appropriate spot. Because these are the same wheel interiors, it's fine to just have these lined up next to each other, because these will all be using similar textures. So now, there we have it. We have our laid out bus, and we'll see if there's anything else just by grabbing this tool. We'll just select everything, hit F, and we'll shift select everything and see if there's anything that gets selected. Nope. Nothing at all. So it looks like everything is UV'd properly. So now that the UVs are finished, now it's on to laying them out. Something that we're going to do, a little this face appears to potentially be disconnected, but oh, that's because we're in face mode. That'll do it. So what we're going to do is, first of all of this needs to be smaller, of course. This all needs to condense down, and it'll be a lot easier. UVs are working in vectors, so it's easy to just do this. But what we're going to do is we're going to organize things by what they are. So what we can do is we'll grab our different pieces and what we need them to do. So this, for instance, is the top of the bus. That'll be sort of a standard paint job. The bottom of the bus as well. We'll likely be using whatever our body paint color is. The two sides of the bus, of course. Our top railings are going to be a similar material, though they may be different. Our license plate we can actually make a little bit bigger. This will make it easier to, if we, for instance, want to apply some sort of a reference with the license plate number, we can do that. Our mirrors are connected to the body of the bus, so that makes sense that they would be similarly in our bus section. We'll put this over here for now. Our lights, we can have our lights be a little bit bigger. At their current size, they may become a little bit jagged and pixelated. Our back of the bus and our front of the bus. Something that we could do would be to create individual seams along the points where there are actual literal seams. For instance, all these places where the glass is. But with the way we're going to be texturing, we should actually be able to handle that just fine with using our specific vertex painting. Or not vertex painting, but painting by faces. If we really wanted to, we could, and we may do that just for the sake of organization, but for the sake of space efficiency, it's likely better to keep our faces like this just flattened out. That could be a modification that we make, however. Those types of choices are something better made by the person who is working on the model directly. I did not create this model, so I'm not sure where things like the edges of where a window stops and begins, or where seam was originally intended. So in this case, I'll be leaving these just as they are, even though it is fairly obvious where certain sections of the windows would be and things like that. For certain elements like the door, I would prefer to leave that to the designer of the object. Here we have our bus wheel interiors, so these will actually be good companions to this section right here, where these interior bus wheels are. These are all objects that will be in fairly close proximity to each other on the model. Our wheels as well. We can keep all these well sectioned. Now it's a matter of laying out where we want these pieces to go. So we do have a pretty easy starting point in that we can use our sort of the longest sides of our object as the beginnings of our square. So if we were to situate these as the corners of our square, that'll give us a good idea of what else we're working with. And we're going to scale everything simultaneously, just to ensure everything remains consistent. So these work well here, and we can grab this, put it here. This is where the UVing process goes from being about creating a pattern and more about creating the puzzle, that puzzle being the size of things. We do want, there's going to be, the majority of the detail is of course in just these main body panels of the bus. So we want to make sure that these are fairly large with the amount of work that's going to be done on the textures for this. So by grabbing all this, keeping it well together. Something also we can do to sort of, because we've got this extra space and this is a very good spot to put something like this, something that we can do is these are where these points go on the model. We can see where this seam leads from one to the other. So we can do that right now because this is already laid out, and we know it's flattened and nicely put together. We can grab these. We're going to avoid those because we don't actually want to connect those points. But we can grab these points, and we can use our move and sew. That fits rather nicely right about there. So continuing our puzzle building process, we will size this out a little bit more. And there we go. So this will give us a nice amount of detail to work with. So there is sort of the question of, okay, we've got this really big piece now. Where do we put this? This, it looks like we can just put that in here. We'll use our straighten UVs to keep it at a good 90-degree angle, and we can fit that fairly cleanly right out there. Move our license plate out of the way, as well as we'll just shift this slightly and grab these pieces and move them out of the way, and move this piece back into place. Now, similarly, like we did with our other pieces, we'll grab these, straighten out these UVs, or we will not. Straightening the UVs in this case actually looks like it turns these into a seam, which is definitely not what we want. So we'll just leave these kind of crooked. That'll be fine. I think these we can straighten. Yeah, these straighten just fine. But these others are not cooperating with that function. So now we're going to grab this. We'll grab our lights. We'll sort of put things into corners where we can. Our mirrors, we can easily give them a little bit of room to breathe. We are going to need a lot of space for our wheels, so let's see how tightly we can get these. It is possible to use things like the layout function is good, especially for things with very straightforward again, it doesn't really matter too much where these are placed in relation to their actual position. All these are going to be likely getting the same texture. Something else that we can do is if we look at these are the interior of the tires, and those are something that won't be seen at all, at least most likely. So what we can do is we can actually afford to shrink this down a little bit, and use that space for something that will be more visible on screen. Grab all these individual pieces. We're keeping all these together because they are similar objects. We'll put this to the side. We'll use our straight UVs. I'm just trying to squeeze as much in as possible because we're only using the single UV sheet in order to keep this a single object. Squeezing everything into place, and we can obviously be more efficient with certain things if we go in. There is I find there to be a therapeutic element to UVing. It's a very just sort of calming thing, at least for the most part. Other times it is not so calming, but it has the potential to be sort of a nice, less hectic thing. So we're just, because we've got a little bit of space, we're just going to sort of make these elements that we can fit a little bit bigger, just making them a little bit bigger just for the sake of, because we're dealing with very tightly packed texture, we're going to want to give things whatever space we can, and things that may have detail on them, giving them that little bit of extra room and that little bit of extra size for adding more detail in the textures. So there we go. We can afford to make this if we wanted to, we could continue to endlessly refine this to a more and more complex shape. But what matters is that this is organized. We have our main body portions. These are more of those main body portions, more of the main body portions. Our wheels are nicely laid out next to each other where we can see them. The wheels and their tire elements, more of the main body elements. These are these individual details. Again, another main body element. This is all nicely spread out. So, with this, we now have our bus laid out into a single, well organized UV set. And from here, we can move on to texturing and then putting those materials into Unreal. Something that we do want to check for is we can see that there are some portions that have overlapping and reversed UVs. Those show up right down here, so we're gonna hunt those down just by clicking. We can see this apparently has some reversed UVs. So we're gonna see if we can find where those UVs are. It'll likely be in somewhere. This is the side that has the door. So it's got some of these complex little patterns in here. So some of these may have overlapped on top of each other at some point during the process. So we'll just go in with our UVs. Here they are. We'll grab these, just individually move them out a little bit. Yeah. So that's taking care of some of those reversed UVs. So let's see if we can find where all of these are. There it is. And there it is. And we're just gently nudging these apart. Just to make sure that we don't have this overlap here. So now if we click on these UVs, there are still some reversed UVs in here, so we're going to keep digging and see if we can find where those overlaps lie. Just sort of selecting at random. So it's somewhere in these sections. Here it is. Another one of our overlapping UVs. as we move these out of the way, that will remove the overlap. See if we can find where our last... So that's all the overlaps in here. Let's see if we can find where the other overlap is. Ah, somewhere in here. It's likely the point where the... somewhere in here. This is currently just guessing and trying to see where we think these could be. Ah, there they are. These are also some of our overlapping UVs. We can see. So, this point may actually be something worth exploring, just due to these strange edges. So this appears to potentially be this creating some strange shapes here. By digging into these, we can find what's gone wrong. We no longer have any reversed UVs, but we do have some of these overlaps. So we're going to hunt these down, and more of the overlap is still present here. So we're going to select these individually and find out where these overlaps are happening. There they are. So tracing out and finding. So it's somewhere in here. Where are, somewhere in here there's a corner. There it is. Perfect. So we can run a quick unfold to see if that'll help with those little pieces and getting them more into place. We'll unfold this and unfold this again. Getting dangerously close to creating more problems. So what we can do is we can grab these individual faces and we'll see if we can unfold these a little bit back into place. Well, we can also give our smooth tool so that's about as nice as we can get that. And now we'll just grab this and shrink it back down to size because our unfold resize is still applied. And there we go. Now that we've got this a little bit back into place. Excellent. So, all of our UV shells, no overlapping UVs, no reverse UVs. Perfect. So, now, on to the next step. So, I decided we are going to go with separating out the glass portions for the sake of keeping things organized again, as mentioned before. So we're going to go around where we know this glass portions are going to be. So if we wanted to, something that we could do would be to rearrange this and actually take the glass out of these spaces. But I think for our purposes this will work just fine. So we are going to save this.